The funeral of Pope Francis is currently underway in Vatican City as tens of thousands of mourners flood into St. Peter's Square. Several world leaders are taking part in the funeral and are paying their last respects for the Argentinian pontiff. US President Donald Trump paid his last respects to the Pope's coffin at St. Peter's Basilica. In addition, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer also paid his final respects to the late Argentinian pontiff. More than 50 heads of state and other dignitaries are attending the late pontiff's funeral today. Indian President Draupadi Murmu also paid her final respects to Pope Francis. The country's Ministry of External Affairs said that President Draupadi Murmu paid homage to His Holiness Pope Francis at St. Peter's Basilica in Vatican City and is of course attending the funeral mass as well. For more on this, we're now being joined by Scott Lucas from Ireland. He is the Professor of International Politics at Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Thank you so much for joining us on WION World as One.
Thank you for having me here.
Now, of course, as we know, the Pope's funeral is currently underway. I just wanted to begin by talking about the Pope's legacy. Of course, we were discussing this earlier as well with some of the other experts that the Pope had actually choreographed this funeral himself. It was his aim to simplify the Vatican's rites and rituals. He wanted to be seen as a mere priest and not this powerful man of the world. What do you have to say about the Pope's legacy?
Well, I think those funeral arrangements, first of all, are in line with the way that the Pope conducted himself. He never wanted to be seen as someone above the people, but as someone among the people. So, for example, when he became Pope, he did not, like his predecessors, live in the very stately residences, you know, the very, very ornate palace that where they had lived. He stayed in a much simpler residence, that he did not use what we call the Pope-mobile, which for previous popes had become like this symbol of them driving around in this vehicle with especially after the assassination attempt on John Paul II, with the protective shielding. He actually wanted to be open. He actually wanted to be among folks. So I think the funeral reflects that. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. He's buried in a very simple plot, again, in contrast to that of his predecessors. But in terms of the wider legacy, I can criticize some of the Pope's views personally in terms of I think he could have been more forthright on certain issues. But I think overall, this was a man who was honest, who very much tried to reach out to those who he considered to be poor, downtrodden, those who had been oppressed in society. He spoke up for the rights of migrants and refugee seekers. Refugees and asylum seekers, despite the fact that many politicians criticized him for it. He spoke up for change in the church, that it had to be a church of the 21st century, despite many conservative Catholic leaders, some of whom would like to be the next pope, many conservatives criticizing him. So I think while he was slow, for example, to acknowledge past sins of the church, especially the child abuse scandals, and while I think on certain issues he still didn't go far enough, I think this is a man whose life should be celebrated today, first and foremost, as someone who was decent.
Absolutely. In fact, you mentioned migrants as well, just some of the issues that he was very passionate about. That being said, we see that Donald Trump is in attendance as well. We know that there was a lot of difference of opinions when it came to the Pope and Donald Trump, especially with regards to his crackdown on migrants. We know prisoners and migrants ushered into the Basilica where he will be buried. How do you assess this message, perhaps the Pope's final message? How do you assess this?
Perhaps on this day when we should focus on the life of Pope Francis. I don't really want to comment on certain politicians like Mr. Trump, who I think were not respectful of that message. I want to focus on what the Pope himself said, in that he had come, as you might know, from Argentina. He's the first Pope from Latin America. He had seen great change, great turmoil in Argentina and in Latin America. He had seen civil wars and conflicts. He witnessed them in other places of the world. He witnessed those who simply were trying to escape and find a better way of life. And what he said is, first and foremost, that the Christian faith teaches us to receive these people with compassion. We don't receive them with hatred. We don't consider them an enemy. We don't consider them a threat. We consider them part of humanity. And I think that's a message that I hope we can all live up to, not only on this day, but on many more going forward.
All right. Well, Professor Lucas, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One with your insights on this. Thank you so much for your time.
Missionaria, la gioia del Vangelo, che è stata anche il titolo della sua prima esortazione apostolica, Evangelii Gaudium.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.